correct way to argue? I don't know if they've said yes or no. You know, we have this opinion that in marriage we're not supposed to argue. I don't know who made up that narrative. But I know that in healthy relationships there is conflict. So if there is conflict, it doesn't mean your relationship is not healthy. Because healthy conflict provides room for us to grow. So it is not the absence of conflict that is peace. It's about how to deal when that conflict comes. And so my answer would be, there is a correct way to argue and an incorrect way to argue. And a scripture is Galatians 5:15. It says, watch out or you will be destroyed by each other. Now, when you see some couples that end up in a divorce courts and you see how toxic it becomes and how, children get dragged into that, you can see that none of us will want to end up there. But if we don't deal with conflict well, that is, bitterness. My husband used to always say there's a very fine line between bitterness and hate. Once the love goes and bitterness comes, then that can quickly turn. And that's what you see. The people that you see very bitter towards one another, they didn't start out that way. And I don't believe they intended. On the day of marriage, there's no one that says, well, if it doesn't work out, I'll just get divorced. I don't think there's anyone that wants to end up in that situation. And we should also know that the rate of divorce for second marriages is higher than that of first marriages, and the rate of third is higher again. So we need to consider, is it that I married the wrong person and so my second marriage will be better? Unfortunately, the rate of divorce is higher in second marriages. So we need to look at the fact that the answer may not be to just put that marriage to the side. It may be to actually work it out, because the same problems that came up now are going to come up in the second and third and however many marriages we want to go through. So we want to encourage us what the relationships we are in, let's deal with it. So our solution is, don't fight for victory, fight for solution. So don't fight for victory. Don't fight so that only one person wins. Fight so that the relationship wins. Differences, they are inevitable. And they're normal, and they're potentially beneficial. So that's what I want you to, I don't know where we are at. And unfortunately, many times those that are having issues in their marriage are not the people that will come to this sort of event. So many of us here might be, we might be okay, but some of us might not be. But if you can, encourage those that are having difficulties next time. Because what happens is, in that situation, such a couple gives up and believes there's no hope. But you don't know whether an event like this is just the catalyst they need to come back. So if you have an event like this again and just encourage them to come. So, and let them know that what they're going through is normal and it can be turned around. If handled effectively, relationships grow through conflict. So I want to look at what is dirty fighting. So what is the wrong way of arguing? And we call it dirty fighting. So this is the way that we fight, and we might recognize many of these. If you see yourself as doing this, don't think you're a bad person, okay? No one's here to say, to wag their finger at you, because at one point or another we have probably done a lot of these. Because we know that we are part flesh, aren't we? And so the part that we lean on the flesh is the part that we will see these behaviors. So we are just highlighting that and there might be one or two that you do that you didn't realize that it was wrong. And so this is what this is about. So number one is bullying. And when we say bullying, it can be something just when you are being angry and you're letting all that anger out and you say something like, shut your mouth. It's not a nice way of putting something. Blaming, it's your fault. Accusing, you did that on purpose to hurt me. Criticizing, you're always so insulting, you are stupid, you don't understand simple things. What's wrong with you? Didn't you go to school? So, criticizing. Putting down, again, based on level of education, based on level of experience, exposure, based on where you've traveled. You can say things like, that's just what I've expected from your sort. So you are finding a way to put the person down. Ignoring. Perhaps you are in the middle of a conflict and the other person is trying to express what is going on for them, and you are just pretending not to hear. It can start off with just pretending not to hear. Some people will even put earphones in, be very obvious about it. I'm not listening to you, humming, putting your fingers in your ears, or just simply ignoring. Sarcasm. Well, look at you, aren't you just the big person? Just using sarcasm. The one that's on your worksheet that you will look at in a bit says, well, that dress would be nice if you had it in the right size. All sorts of things that might be said. Threatening. Do what I say or it's over. If you don't stop doing this, I'm going to stop doing this. Making threats. Exaggerating. This is where we said always and never. You're always late. You're always the one that makes us late. You never do anything around the house. You never say anything nice to me. You always say the wrong thing. You always hurt me. All of these things. Lying. I called, but the line was busy. Or I didn't see your message. Why did you not tell me you were going to be late? I texted you, or I didn't see it. But maybe you did. Silent treatment. Withdrawing or withholding behavior. That can be withholding your love, withholding your affection, withholding sex, withholding financial benefits, but withholding or withdrawing behavior. So those are all the things we shouldn't do. Now, one of the remedies to that is, there are two remedies I want to share. One is called taking a time out. Now, we're not talking about children. We've heard so much about putting children on time out. That's not what we're talking about. We are talking about you yourself taking time out from the situation. No, and this needs to be an agreement between the two of you. If you're here and your spouse is not, and you've heard about time out, and then you go home and you're in the middle of an argument and you say, I'm taking a time out, and they don't understand what you're doing, it's going to cause more conflict. So it's an agreement. You need to agree with your spouse that when conflict is escalating between us, in the sense that, anger is like a mat. It sends you're not thinking clear in that moment. It's like you're not of your proper mind. And you can say anything. A lot of these behaviors that you wouldn't think you would never say, if you are pushed enough, you'll be surprised at the things that will come out of your mouth. So it's better. I remember when I was growing up as a teenager and all those wonderful hormonal things that come out of teenagers, and my mother was such that she will not stop. If you try to go to another room, she will follow. If you want to go to sleep, she will follow until it's resolved at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're so tired, you just say, well, I agree with you. So, but we need to be able to to take time out, not to insist. Another remedy that we hear is don't let the sun go down on anger. And so I remember my mother and father, every argument must be solved before anybody sleeps in the house. Well, when you are tired, you can't react the way you need to. So in such a situation, you need to say, okay, I love you, you love me, let's continue this when we are in a better space. Don't push and push and push, or you'll see some of those other things come out. So you need to arrange a time out. So once one of you feels overwhelmed and that you need a break, it's time to agree for a time out. And don't just use it as an excuse because you want to get out of the thing. It should be an agreement, and it should be for an agreed time. This is the other thing. Don't just be like, oh, we are too agitated, let's do it another time. And there's no stated time for that other time. And that means one of you is expecting, are we going to talk about it in 20 minutes? And the other person thinks you're going to talk about it next week. So agree on a time. We need 20 minutes out so that we can just cool down. Or we need 40 minutes, or I need a day, or we need a better time to discuss this. And let it be brief. Try and not say, okay, we'll talk about it next week. We'll talk about it next month. Try and not let it fester. So ideally, something like 20 minutes. So just say, okay, we're getting too excited. I wasn't use the word excited, but we're getting too exasperated. We're getting too upset. Let's just cool down. Let's take 20 minutes out. And then move to separate places. I don't want to encourage anyone to leave home. What I mean is go to a different room. If need be, do something, go for a walk, clean the kitchen, play a game, watch TV. Just do something to take your mind off it. And then come back together at the correct time, and you will both feel a lot better to resolve it. But don't just stay in the situation, just get more and more and more upset and angry. Then, how do we actually have this argument? Now we've cooled down, we've come back together, we need to resolve it. Where do we start from that we don't get back into the same situation? There's something called a fair fight for change. And you can see that it says a fight for change. So something needs to change, and we need to get towards that thing changing. And so we are going to talk about how to do it. And there are 10 steps to do that. The first one is to invite your spouse to engage into this discussion with you. You need to state the complaint that you have, one specific thing, which will stop you from saying, well, you always do this. I mean, last week you did this, yesterday you did this, today you did this again, you are just this, you are just that. No, just state one thing. Earlier today, this happened. And also, one of the things I learned was the way you say it. If you put all the blame on the other person, it doesn't really work. If you say, earlier you did this, and I didn't really like it, the way you did it, because I would prefer that you did it like this. So you see how you've put it. You've not even blamed the other person, you've actually blamed yourself. Because if you were a different person, maybe you wouldn't have minded the way they did it. But because you are you, and you have all the love languages, and you have things that you like to receive things in a certain way, and the way the other person did it didn't fit with the way you like it. So it's your fault. So you are telling them, not you. So you don't start off with you. You say, I didn't like this because I would have preferred it if it was like this. And it just calms the situation down, and it's a good way of communicating. So you've said this to your spouse. Now your spouse needs to turn around to you, and then you can see how much work this is. That's why we said love is work. Love is doing, because this takes a lot of patience and time and calm. So you've told the person, I didn't like this because whatever. They now say, so what you're saying is you didn't like that I did this because you would prefer this. So they've repeated it back. And then you can say, I'm really, thank you that you listened to me and you've heard what I said. And then now state what the specific way to make it better is. So, next time, maybe this is the way we could do it. Maybe we could do it like this, we could do it like that. And again, the spouse is going to repeat back what you said, show appreciation, and then agree to do it that way the next time. So you have not just got into an argument and stated everything that your spouse is terrible at. You have selected one thing, and by the end of this conversation, you have gotten a solution of how it could be done better. And it's helped. It's something I use all the time as an illustration. If you have a problem, don't, put the problem on the chair. So if you imagine you bring that chair to the middle, and whatever the conflict is, you put it on that chair. It's not the fault of your spouse, and it's not your fault. We are both going to work on tackling that problem together. So for example, if we are late to appointments all the time, and it may be one particular spouse's fault, but we cannot change that person, because nobody can change anyone except God. Something I've learned, you can try and you can try, but you can't change that person. All you can do is pray that God will change them. So you can't change them. So if you acknowledge the fact that you can't change them, but here we are always late because this person doesn't know how to arrange themselves to be on time, then you say, okay, what can we, so put the problem of being late on the chair, what can we together do in order to make sure that we leave the house on time? and you come up with a collective solution that helps. So you can see the difference on how we are aiming towards not being right, but aiming towards making a solution. And so if we implement that, it will really help us. The last thing I want to mention there in terms of when there is a conflict and definitely we are heated, we might have said some things that are upsetting, we need to understand how to apologize. And again, there are 5 languages of apology, but this time all of them are applicable. We don't need to pick one. We can do all of these 5 things. The first one is to express regret. At that stage, I may not really have understood what I did wrong, but I can see that you're upset. And so I'm sorry that you're upset. So the first step is, okay, I am sorry that you are upset. So even though you think the person is overreacting, or what, if you did that to me, I wouldn't care, what is the big deal? But you still express regret. I'm sorry. The second one now is accepting responsibility. Okay, I was wrong. Or it might not be that you were wrong, but there's misunderstanding somewhere. Either they didn't understand what you meant and that's why they're upset. But rather than arguing your rights, you just say, okay, I was wrong in the way I presented it to you, or however you're upset, I'm sorry, I was wrong. And then don't just leave it there, make it right. Some of us say, okay, I'm sorry if you're upset. And we think that's the end. The next step is we should say, what can I do to make it right? What can I do to make it right? So you're asking the person, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I can see you're upset. What can I do next time to make it right? The next is genuinely repenting. I'll try not to do that again. I'm an imperfect person, but I will pray that God will help me not to do that again. And then request forgiveness. Will you please forgive me? It takes a lot more effort for us to say, please forgive me, than it does to say, I'm sorry. Because I'm sorry is like, it's okay, I'm sorry, but please forgive me. It's a very humbling kind of statement. Please forgive me. You can't say, please forgive me without genuine remorse. So even if we can just practice that when we are apologizing, just say, please forgive me. It will help us better. And so if you don't know how to apologize to the other person and how the other person likes to be apologized to, you could be saying sorry in all the ways you know how to say sorry, but it's not having any effect. And you are wondering why the other person is still upset. I've said sorry. I've even bought them a gift. What more do they want? But you haven't said sorry. Maybe you have not reached a solution on how you're not going to do it the same time. And the person in the head is thinking, they will just do the same thing next time. So do it in a way that they want it to be done. And so our exercise that you have in front of you, again, is a worksheet. And we are going to look at all the dirty fighting tactics are written down there. I'm not going to look at it. Your pastor's not going to look at it. Nobody is going to see it. So don't be worried about being honest. It's for yourself. For you to recognize which one of those you fall to and you do when you are upset. If we don't know ourselves, we can't correct it. So we can tick those things where it says what I do. We can tick them, the things that we do, and then if nothing else, we can take this sheet to God and say, God, these are the things I've been doing. Today I've understood they are wrong. Holy Spirit, help me not to do them again. You can take it a step further and note down what your spouse does. Now, I don't want that you came for love is what we do and you go home and there's World War III in your house. So again, you don't even need to show this one to your spouse. It's for you to pray. If you want to show it to your spouse, you can. But you can also use it. You can tick, this is what my spouse does, and I want to pray for them, that God will help them not to do this anymore. And there's even an extra column, what my spouse will say I will do. This is for an extra level of accountability, because there are things you will not want to tick. But by the time you think about it, what would my spouse say I do that? It might make you to put a tick where you didn't put a tick before. And again, you can pray about it. If you want to, you can share it with your spouse. You can talk about it. You can pray together on it. But if you want to just take it to God by yourself, you can also do that as well. So again, we have a few minutes to do that, and then we'll be back. My husband will be back for the last talk, which is about how to deal with stress and pressure in our marriages.